Hello, you're watching Stretford Paddock with me, Joe. Today we're going to be doing a paper review, basically looking at all the stories that have been in the paper over the last couple of days. And mostly today, well, over the last couple of days, basically, it's been who's leaving Man United. Obviously, we've had a lot of, well, I say a lot. We've had 3 transfers in over the summer, and not really as many people leaving as we were expecting at the start of the summer. Obviously, Solskjaer hinted, when was it? Was it the Cardiff game? There'll be players here next year, will be here, and they won't necessarily be here. And yet, so far, pretty much everyone except Herrera is still there. So, obviously, the international transfer market doesn't shut for a little bit longer yet, so we can still get some players out this summer, and that's basically what all the papers have been talking about. The first one is Alexis Sanchez. He's on anything from, 350 to, I think I saw 525 grand mentioned for him once, which he can't be on all of that, can he? I think he's maybe has a performance and appearance bonuses. But this is the Sun basically saying Solskjaer ready to dump Alexis Sanchez to Man United reserves and may pay Roma to take the 505, that's the figure they've chosen, a week flop on loan. So essentially what they're saying is that the way that they're going to pay Roma is by subsidising some of his contract, because they can't afford to pay 505 grand or 350 grand or 550 grand, whatever figure they've pulled out of the sky on any given occasion. I think there was interest earlier in the summer we saw from Inter Milan maybe, but I think that seems to have cooled now. Obviously, I don't think they can afford to pay Lukaku and Sanchez anything like the wages they're on at United. Not both of them at the same time anyway. The Times, again, same thing. Alexis Sanchez wants to leave Man United if he cannot get regular first-team football. And in fact, I think that sort of the supposed appearance clause in Sanchez's contract might be playing against him, because if you know as a club that every time he plays you have to give him another 75 grand a week and he's not really playing that well, the incentive is to not play him. He's saving money by not playing him. So it's a tricky one for him, where he thinks he's getting more. When you sign that contract, you think, every time I play, I get an extra 75 grand. But if you're not playing well, then the manager doesn't want to pay you, because obviously it's not Solskjaer's money. But there'd be something maybe in the back of his mind thinking, you know what, he's not worth an extra 75 grand a week when he scored 2 goals in 16 appearances, I think it was, for United last season. So the incentive doesn't seem to be there to play him at the moment. Obviously, he's still not back from pre-season. He didn't. I think he's been training for a while, and I think Solskjaer said that he should be back in the coming days or weeks. But you know, it's just been a really tricky and difficult situation basically ever since he joined United. So I think if they could get him to Roma, then that could be something that would, I think, suit all parties really. The only problem for me with that is that United do start to look a little bit thin up top if that happens. Obviously, we've got rid of Lukaku, we've got Greenwood coming in, but you can't really expect too much from a 17-year-old in terms of just the number of games you can play. A 17-year-old lad going from the youth team, you can't all of a sudden make 35, 40 appearances, maybe as a sub here and there, but I think physically we shouldn't expect that much from him. And then if Sanchez goes as well, basically we've got Lingard, Martial, Rashford and Greenwood. And I guess James, 5 players covering 3 positions. So you're only 2 injuries away from an absolute crisis sort of as an attacking team. Despite the fact that maybe Sanchez isn't offering much anyway, just having the numbers in the squad is probably maybe worth keeping him, or do you think it is worth keeping him? Obviously, we're live today, so let me know what you think. Do you think it's worth keeping Sanchez, or is he just completely Deadwood at this point? Next up, then, it's more outs. Same again. We've got Marcus Rojo this time. Another player you sort of think, I can't believe he's still at the club. He's made very few appearances over the last sort of 18 months. That's been a mixture of injuries and not being able to sort of cement his place in the side when he has been injury-free. And this one's coming from the Mirror and the Times. The Mirror reporting that Marcus Rojo could be set to leave United for a Turkish side, Fenerbahce, after his Everton transfer fell through, and the Times as well saying Marcus Rojo is angry that a move to Everton fell through and is determined to leave Man United before the European transfer deadline. You can see why he'd want to leave. He's just such a rash player and he's so aggressive. I'm not surprised he's angry that his Everton move fell through. He gets angry at everything. He gets angry when the fridge door doesn't open. He gets angry when he can't tie his shoelaces. He's just an angry, aggressive, crazy bloke, isn't he? So I'm not surprised he's angry at that. I think Fenerbahce could be a good move for him. I guess it's one of those. It must be difficult as a footballer to take a step down in wages, to take a step down in the stature and the sort of the size of the club you're playing. And I can understand that, but United have got, what is it? I think 7 or 8 centre backs that are all vying for 2 positions, and obviously Maguire and I think Lindelof are pretty much nailed on to start whenever they're fit. And then it looked like at the weekend Twanzebe was that third centre-back on the bench. So I would assume that Rojo is even behind Jones and Smalling. So that's, he's down to sort of 6 in the pecking order. Unless we have an injury crisis at centre-back, which obviously we can't rule it out because we have had quite a few over the years. I'm thinking Darren Fletcher and Patrice Evra playing at centre-back in one game a few years ago. Unless we have a complete collapse in injuries, I don't think he's going to get much of a game for United. It does help him slightly that he can play at left-back. Maybe that increases his chances. Maybe he's thinking if Luke Shaw gets injured, and obviously Ashley Young's another year older after he got a lot of criticism over the last couple of years, maybe he can pick up some games at left back. But I think really the best thing for him to do would be to probably leave. Again, next up then, it's just Exodus. This is all we're talking about today. Who's going to go, where they're going. Next up, it's Matteo Darmian, and apparently Inter Milan have agreed some sort of deal to sign Matteo Darmian on a free transfer next summer, which means he's staying another year. How is this possible? It feels like he hasn't played a game in about 3 years. And the deals that are being talked about, which is Rai Sport, which, I mean, I don't even know if they exist, let alone are reliable. But it's been a few different sources have been reporting this one, that the deal's going to be next summer on a free. Why don't you just take him for 3 million now or 6 million now? He's 29. He's not playing games. How can he spend another season at United having not played for so long? That's a bit of a baffling one to me. I'm surprised that Inter want to wait a year if that is true. I just can't believe that he would be staying another year. But again, it looks like United, I don't know whether it's a mixture of us paying people too much money in wages, us demanding too much for fees, or we don't want to get sort of bent over a barrel for fees, so we just can't sell anyone. It's difficult because over the years, obviously United have got a bit of a bad rap for selling players too cheaply, and yet when we try and get money for people just don't sell. Like even Lukaku in the end, we sort of had to settle for a slightly lesser fee with potential add-ons or supposedly quite easily achievable add-ons. But it just seems like either we do get screwed over on prices or we can't sell people. So it's a difficult position to be in. Obviously, every club around the world and every person around the world knows that Man United have got loads of money, so they don't want to give us more money. They think we can spare a player here or there. So I think that's one of the reasons we struggle. But what do you think to Matteo Darmian? Do you think he's got a future at United? Again, talking about that sort of weakness at left back. He did used to play left back at Torino, and I think he played left back a few times for United. So maybe the reason that Solskjaer is sort of slightly reluctant to sell Darmian this year would be that sort of cover at left back. Obviously, we only have one sort of proper. I say proper. One kind of experienced left back in Luke Shaw, and no other. We haven't really had many of the left backs coming through the youth squad. Not that Solskjaer's shown any faith in so far, at least anyway. So maybe Darmian thinks he's got a chance of playing there, and maybe Solskjaer thinks he's got a chance of playing there, which is why that deal next summer has been talked about. And finally today then, we've got another outgoing, of course, like that's what I said, that's what the video's all about. We've got Nemanja Matic, and this is according to the MEN, Manchester Evening News. They are saying that he could be released at the end of next season. Obviously his contract expires then. It seems as though, I don't know, I feel a bit bad for Matic really, because when he came in, he looked so good. He'd just come off the back of that title-winning season at Chelsea, and it looked so good for United. It was that sort of position that we hadn't had for a long time, that kind of really steady, sure, defensive midfielder that can just break up play really well. And his mobility was never great, but because of his sheer size, he could cover a lot of ground sort of with his legs, and his brain was very quick, so he could sort of make up that kind of first 2 or 3 yards in his head almost. But he just seems, over pre-season particularly, and sort of somewhat at the end of last season as well, he just seems to have lost something. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's that sort of energy, or almost like he's not quite as bothered. I wouldn't want to accuse him of not trying, of course, but it seemed like a lot of players at the end of last season looked like they weren't bothered, and he doesn't seem to have snapped out of that in a way that some of the other players have. People got, Pogba got a lot of criticism, Martial got a lot of criticism, and people like Lingard got a lot of criticism, but they seem to have managed to find a way to turn a corner on that throughout pre-season, and obviously against Chelsea as well, and Matic doesn't quite seem to have done that. He was giving the ball away a lot in the games that we saw against sort of AC Milan and Tottenham. So it seems as though he might be more of a fringe player. Again, Andreas Pereira starting ahead of him even against Chelsea. So, you know, it doesn't. The future doesn't exactly look bright for them. We've got King Solafai on YouTube saying Darmian and Rojo ain't got a future at United. They should go. I think that's basically what a lot of people are saying. It's just, how do we get rid of them? How do we get people to pay 150 grand a week? Or, you know, I don't know exactly what they're on, but I think there was talk that Rojo is on somewhere between 100,000 and 150,000 pounds a week. That's a lot of money for a player that's going to Fenerbahce. They can't afford wages like that. So it's going to be difficult. Anyway, that's going to be all for today. Thank you very much for joining me. It's good to be back. I've had about a week off, so I'm enjoying doing this again. Let us know what you think to all of these. Do you think Matic should go? Do you think Rojo should go? Do you think Sanchez should go? Or do you think there's still a player left in Sanchez? He's only, well, I say only 30. He's 30. In theory, should still have 2 or 3 years at the top level, but he seems to have dropped off. Let me know what you think to all of these and any more news as well that's coming in, and we'll see you next time.